Hey guys, Doug Walker here. A lot of you probably saw my Unfriended review and know it was originally an attempt to go see It Follows, and how the guy that worked in the movie theater pretty much gave away the plot of the movie, which was supposed to be like shielded in secret. Everyone was supposed to say, don't let them give away the plot. So when I said that, not everyone, but a lot of people were like, oh my god, you still gotta see It Follows. Please go see it. It's so good. Like, it's 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. All sorts of people are really enjoying it. So we said, okay. So we went Wednesday because we knew by Thursday it'll probably be kicked out of theaters because there's one showtime every day for this movie, so we're like, okay, this has got to be on its last legs. So we finally went and saw this movie. Actually, Malcolm went with us to see it for a second time, because he said he really wanted to take it in and understand it more, so I'm like, oh my god, I am so excited to see this film, like, everyone's going nuts about it. Yeah, I don't know what I thought of this movie. All I can really talk about is sort of the feeling it left on me. I'll talk a little bit about the story here. Pretty much, it takes place in the 40s through the future, and what I mean by that is that it doesn't give you an exact time period. I don't mean like, whatever, they pick a time period and they just don't tell you what it is. I mean like there's TVs from the 50s up until like the 80s. The shows they're watching seem mostly 40s. Some of the fashions seem very 70s. There's Polaroids, but then there's like a compact that's also like a computer that this one girl is using that clearly is something that doesn't exist yet and is from the future. So it's obviously purposefully trying to be in no specific time period or like all time periods. So interesting. And pretty much this girl comes across this boy, they're going out, and he passes something along to her where some sort of entity follows whoever has this thing. And again, I'm trying to say only what's in the trailer for this, and they clearly show that. They show that a boy passes something on to a girl, and this thing can change its identity. It can look like anybody, and it sort of does it at random. It can look like a little kid. It can look like a tall man. So he passes it on to her, and he says that if you die, it comes back to me, so don't die. Which is always nice. And the whole movie, it's pretty much this thing chasing her down, like a traditional horror film, and them trying to figure out how to get rid of it. So yeah, that's the initial setup. I will say I'll go into what I think of the film before I give away like what it is, because like I said, everyone's sort of saying don't say what it is. I don't think it's a big deal, really. In fact, honestly, after the guy told me, I was kind of like, oh well, they say that pretty early on. So everyone's acting like it's the next Cabin in the Woods, like it's this great satire or something like that. I didn't quite see it as that, but I kind of know where they're coming from with it. But this thing that's passed on, obviously it's kind of a slasher film, and that this entity follows these people that have it, this thing being passed on, it follows, and doesn't run, always walks, which I like. You would think like, well, this thing's not very efficient and stuff, but it's clearly just for the creep factor, and it works, and they get some nice, scary people to follow these people around. Which is nice. I thought that was really missing from Unfriended, is that they had great build-up, but no scary payoff as much. At least scary imagery, I should say. And this has some scary imagery, which I very much enjoy. They get some really creepy people and put dark stuff under the eyes and just some creepy creation, so I really like that. But here's the thing about the film, is that it's done in kind of an abstract way. Like I said, it doesn't pick a time period. It's keeping it very open, and which I'm fine with. I was curious where this was going. I was actually trying to sort of guess the twist or the surprise or whatever the setup was. And they have this emphasis on certain numbers as well, like and maybe it's coincidence, but some of these were a little too specific. Like the house that they start off on is numbered 1492. Okay, it could be a coincidence, whatever. But then when it goes to another house where the main character lives, the three middle numbers are there, the other two numbers are taken off. Why would they do that? That's so specific. And there's all sorts of weird little symbols like that throughout the film that make me think, okay, well, this is building up to something. And then the film, obviously purposefully, ends abruptly. It does not end on like a big climax, or I hope that wasn't supposed to be the big climax in this film. And then you sort of realize, oh well, it's supposed to be open to interpretation. Here's my problem with that. Anyone who knows me knows I love abstract films. I love films that are trying something different, and in many respects, this one does. I love David Lynch films. I love Tree of Life. I love Kubrick films. This is stuff I really like. Here's my problem with it, though. In my opinion, this film gave too many rules for it to live in an abstract world. Films that really know how to do this know how much reality to give and how much of an abstract illusion to give, or just a world based on feelings and ideas. Tree of Life is very much an experience of like maybe when you're half awake and half asleep, or maybe before you die, just suddenly seeing your life or life in general. Something like I'm trying to think. It's something like a David Lynch film is very much when you're half awake, half asleep. It's something like Where the Wild Things Are is a world clearly fueled only by the boy's emotions. The emotions dictate the logic. Here, if they wanted to go for the abstract and not have a time period, and this can take place anywhere and stuff, that's fine. But there's far too much explanation of the rules and how this killer works and how it moves, which even then they don't always stick to. There's a lot of explaining about this thing, when I pass it on to you, it's only in you, and you have to pass it on to someone else, but then that person can't die, because then it'll come back to you, and it'll keep going down the line, so you can't die. Now, this thing can only be seen by you and the person you pass it on to, and the person that had it before, but nobody else can see it. But it can still pick things up, and people, if you throw a blanket on it, you can physically see it, but it can change shape, even though you never see it change shape. There are so many rules to this that it takes you out of the abstract nature. And really, this film does not transport you to like a different being or a different reality, because you're constantly reminded this is a slasher film. It's a horror film. And really, no more is that emphasized than in how they pass it on, which I'll get to in a bit. I'll say, like, spoilers, don't watch past this point. But because of that, I personally could not get into whatever the film was trying to do. There's lots of films I see where, if you were to ask me what was the point of that film, I don't know if I could tell you. A lot of P.T. Anderson films, like Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love and stuff, I can't entirely tell you what the purpose of the film is, but I can tell you that the characters were so interesting, and the way it was told was so interesting, and the environment and the reality it created was so fascinating that I just wanted to be along with the ride, and I followed more of the emotions of it than I did the logic, and I think that was the intent. With this, the characters are pretty stock horror film characters. Even sort of the setup is a very stock horror film setup, but it has kind of this interesting angle that is a bit Cabin in the Woods-ish, I suppose. But anyone saying, like, this is another Cabin in the Woods, don't believe them. This is not a Cabin in the Woods. It's not a comedy. There's a bit of a satirical element to it. If there's more, I didn't see it. But like I said, I'll get to that in a moment. So it was hard for me to get into this film because I am constantly distracted, not only by how inconsistent it is, but how inconsistent the tone and the environment was. Because where some films ask questions in terms of, well, this is a question to ask, like, what did they say at the end of Lost in Translation, or what was in the suitcase in Pulp Fiction? These are questions to ask where you fill in the blanks. This one doesn't work that way. You see, in those, they're on purpose, where in this one, they're distractions, because you're asking, well, wait, if you shot the thing in the neck and it went down and it got right back up, well then you can't kill it. Yet there's a scene at the end where they're going to try and throw a bunch of stuff into a pool to try to electrocute it. But it can't die that way. But then later, there's a scene where they do pretty much the same thing, trying to shoot it with a gun, and they're giving the illusion like it really is dead. But you're like, well, wait, it got right back up before. Why would it not do it before? There's all these inconsistencies that they don't feel like they're set up to be like this. The answers are not filled by yourself. They're not answered by yourself. They seem very much like we just sort of forgot to answer this ourselves. That's what it seems like to me. That's what it feels like to me. And there's a lot of scenes that are set up that don't go anywhere. There's a scene where she's looking out at a boat and there's three boys out there and they're like fishing or something like that, and she's thinking about passing this thing on. You see her start to get undressed, like she's getting her bathing suit, and she starts to walk out there, and then you never know what happens, which is like, okay, some movies are like that, you never know, but she didn't pass it on because the thing keeps coming back to her. So you're kind of like, well, what was the point of that scene? There's another scene where the camera is circling this school, and at first I was really in love with this shot. They walk in, they're going to find out some information on this other kid, and you see this girl far away in a white jacket is walking kind of like how this thing walks, and it circles around, and you see them getting information, and then it comes around, and you see her a little closer. Maybe you didn't even notice her early on in the shot, but then you see she's a little closer, circles around again, you see she's a little closer, and then you see they find the information and they walk out, and then you see him in the car, and there's that girl again in the background, and she's walking, getting closer. It's like, oh, and then they focus on the girl. It's like, oh, here we go. Cut. You never see where that goes. So maybe the idea, again, is creating this environment like, hey, you just sort of never know, and there are times where they play with it like you don't know if the person walking is this thing or if it's just a person, but it's done in such a way where you kind of go, well, that was just a cheat that never followed through or seemed to not really have a purpose. And the scenes like that, the questions in this movie did not pull me in. They pushed me away. And I found it really distracting. With that said, there's still some good stuff in here. There's good... the creepy environment is very good. I like the people they choose for this thing to infect, or at least, have them walk. The people they choose to just walk slowly and creepily really walk slow and creepily very well. I know it sounds silly, but it's like they do it really well. And when they're building up, like, what's this person going to see, what's going to be behind the corner and stuff like that, majority of the time they do not do a fake out jump scare. They show something scary there, which I'm like, it's gotten to a point now where every time they're building up, something's gonna scare you, and then there's nothing there. And then the scare is right behind them. It's been done so many times, it's not shocking anymore. So now the new shock is build up that something is gonna be there and actually have something be there. It's like, Marvel idea, but it's like we've just done the fake out so much, it's not a fake out. We can all see it coming. So just building up saying something is going to be there and then something is there actually is much scarier. And I'm glad this movie picks up on that. Now, there's one or two jump scares, not many. And they're pretty silly. And everyone jumps, but it's like, oh, it's a ball. Oh, the wall falls down. And there's your person. Stupid. But again, I understand you keeping the tension up and you have to feel a little uncomfortable. So I kind of get that. You want to keep the, sort of, like I said, the tension up. So, yeah, but my biggest problem before I get to what this thing is that I felt that the world and the environment they were trying to create was not involving enough. In that it did not create enough of an abstract world or an idea behind it that I could pick up on without constantly being pulled back into, this is a horror film. We're in a slasher film. I'm not like, oh my god, I really feel like I'm this person, or I really understand this person's psychology or stuff like that. It's like they're stock horror film characters, which is fine. But if you're gonna try and do something that's like different and innovative and artsy and open interpretation, what did it mean? You have to have something more interesting. You have to have something that's gonna suck in much more than this idea. And because the character's actions half the time don't make sense. The guy that does this to her, he straps her to a wheelchair to show her this thing, and he drugs her, and then he drops her off at her house, tied up and stuff like that. And her friends see her and go and pick her up and stuff. They finally find this guy, and they want to find out what this is. So they locate his house, and his parents are there, or his mother is anyway, and they just sit down and talk with him. Okay, if I was this chick, I would be so fucking pissed off at this guy. Like, okay, you give me some goddamn answer. You tell me what's going on. I'm gonna call the fucking cops on you. I can report your ass for you drugged me, you tied me up, you held me against my will, and you had this thing chase us down, you dropped me. I mean, there are a million, legitimate crimes he can charge against this guy. They just sit down and talk, and he's like, oh no, I'm uncomfortable talking about it. It's like, why did nobody act accordingly in this film? And like I said, when they're trying to kill this thing, everyone in the theater, I could hear them talking. This is the scene where they're going to throw stuff in the pool, a bunch of electricity to try and shock it. Everyone's like, wait, couldn't the thing following them start to throw the stuff? Because they have the girl in the pool. Couldn't he throw stuff in the pool? That's what he does. Wait, don't they remember that when they tried to kill it before, it didn't die, so it probably won't work this time? That's what happens. I mean, it's bizarre how much this stuff doesn't add up. And even when you see how this thing kills, it kills off this boy in the middle of the film. I don't think they give away who it is or anything. There's a lot of boys and girls. But you see how it kills. And then you go back to the opening when you saw a girl die from this thing. Again, this is the intro. You see a girl die from this thing, and they don't add up. They don't match up the same ways that they die. So nothing in this film seems consistent, but it does not feel like the inconsistencies were intentional. With that said, I'm not by any means saying I'm right on this. I'm not saying that, if you like this, you're a moron, or you're reading into something that's not there. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying very much that A, I couldn't emotionally get sucked into the abstract element of it, and B, I didn't see what the intention was outside of this sort of clever twist. Twist-ish on this idea of horror films. That just seems like almost like any other horror film, except that they do it in a more artsy way. If I have to hear that fucking music start to build and then just cut, stop. I mean, it's like the first couple times that was good. It created an uncomfortable feeling, but then by the 10th or 11th, I'm done. Like, when it's getting louder and louder, and I'm like, I wonder if it's gonna just cut in the middle of it going, and that's supposed to make us uncomfortable. And it does it again, and it does it so many times that it just slapped me out of whatever world or environment it was trying to create. So that's the basic review. I'll go into what this thing finally is. So if you don't want to hear it, you don't want it ruined, turn it off. Go see it for yourself. Like I said, I'm not saying I'm right or you have to feel the exact same way. By no means, because this film is getting a lot of critical praise. And I would very much like to know if other people have the same reaction, or if it's like, no, Doug, you clearly missed this very obvious thing. Like, it could be. So there's that. So if you don't want to know how this thing is transmitted, go ahead, stop it now. So you're still here, you want to know. It's transmitted, it's pretty much an evil STD. Every time somebody sleeps with someone, this monster comes and tries to get them. It's a very clever setup, because obviously this is where people say it's like Cabin in the Woods. It's why do people who have sex in horror films always die? Now, of course, you could say the ethical, the moral and stuff, and that they're trying to get this message across. But here, it's very much the monster only goes after people who have this disease or whatever, this STD, and pass it on to someone else. So that's a very clever setup, and I guess I can see where they connected to Cabin in the Woods, because it's why do these genres, why does this happen in the genre, and they're trying to sort of explain it and give this angle. But like I said, outside of that, there's little to no comedy in this at all. So do not think you're getting Cabin in the Woods. So with that said, I like this setup. It's not a bad setup. But I didn't, and you have a great setup for satire and commentary. but I don't understand why they just went a traditional horror film with the story, but went this really weird abstract take with the style. The two did not seem to go together. And that's not at all to say it can't. I thought it went well with The Shining. If you're asking me what the intention of The Shining was, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But like from the first frame, you're clearly not in reality. No Kubrick film are you ever in reality. You're in this very different like state of being and uncomfortableness and coldness. The way they talk, the way the camera moves, everything about it is sort of in this weird state of being. So it can be done. But with this, like I said, if in The Shining they were constantly saying, well, now, here's the limitations of the boy's power, and now you can only think it between this time, because then it gets cut off, but then if you contact me, past that time, that's when my ability gets cut off. Oh, by the way, the ghost is actually the ghost of this other guy who can only come around only when the sun is, only when the moon is a full moon, and only when this is If there's too many rules, it ceased to create that environment anymore, and you become more aware it's a movie, that it's a horror film, because, Gremlins, clearly there's rules to these things, and they don't even make that much sense, but that's sort of the goofy nature of the film. Now, Gremlins is not trying to be abstract. It's a straightforward kind of B film, and that's great, and it works wonderfully. But when you're trying to explain, when you give it to me, only we can see it, and now you can see it, but physically all the other people can't see it, but they can touch it, and it can interact, but they have to guess where it is, kind of like the Invisible Man, but then when you shoot it in the neck, it'll go down, but come back up, but when you shoot in the head, it'll go down for an even longer amount of time, and it just gets so stock. It becomes such a stock horror film with an interesting style for a while, but then it just kind of gets old. And I remember kind of looking at my watch at the end, on my phone, who has a watch anymore, but I was looking at my phone saying, so how long is this movie again, and when is it gonna, give me the payoff that I'm waiting for? And the payoff never comes. The payoff is, fill in your own explanation, which I usually love. I usually love that kind of stuff, but it did not create an environment where that was inviting. It created an environment where I doubted, I did not trust the filmmaker to ask me intelligent questions, if that made sense. Where with someone like a David Lynch or so forth, like, I do. Because I'm like, well, what are you trying to say? It's something different, it's something intriguing, and it has brought me to this new world and this new way of sort of thinking about film and experience things. It has brought me to a new experience. This didn't feel like an experience to me. This felt like a horror film with an artsy style that didn't always connect to the film. There's a scene where one of the things it takes the shape of is this woman who's peeing her pants. Now, it's a scary-looking woman, and they build it up very nicely. Why is she peeing her pants? Well, you'll have to draw your own conclusion. No, because you're still keeping me in the traditional horror film setup. That these are 5 or 6 stock characters that are going to get, axed off slowly. And even some things like one girl really likes to sleep a lot and likes to eat a lot. I thought, are they each supposed to be like a deadly sin or something? Like, even when I'm trying to read into this, even with like the 1492, I'm like, is it that we brought STDs to America when Columbus died? Like, and I realize I'm reading much more deeper into this than either what was intended or beyond what I wanted to care about. So that's my initial reaction to the film. I'm not saying I totally hated it. I don't even know if I even kind of disliked it. It was just that it did not, whatever it was trying to do, I did not catch on to. And I don't know if that's a fault with the film or with me as an audience member. Because there could be lots of audience members that are like, boom, I get it. I got what this film was trying to do. Someone could watch it and be like, it's symbolic of the Holocaust, and everybody gets it except me. So I'm not saying at all that, like, if you don't like it, it's not good. It's not like District 9 where I clearly know what it's saying. It's just so poorly done, in my opinion. Again, a lot of people like it. If you like it, great. I thought it was awful. By the way, how are his other films doing? What, Chappie and Matt Damon's Terminator? I hear they're really good. I'm being a dick, sorry. I'm sure Alien's gonna be great. I really don't like that guy's stuff. I'm sorry. But nevertheless, if you do, great. But the symbolism in those films is very obvious. Here, it might be too abstract, at least for me. It was hard for me to figure out what it was trying to do, what kind of tone it was trying to get, and what it was trying to accomplish outside of just STDs are bad, use protection. And that there is sort of this, hey, isn't it kind of funny how this always happens in horror films element. Now here's a little bit of a reason, at least with this thing. So, yeah, this is one of those films I actually would really love if people comment below and say if you liked it and you're one of the 95% of Rotten Tomatoes that just absolutely loves it and sees it as this genius work, tell me why. Because I'm really, really curious. I'm curious if I'm missing something. And I'm very open to acknowledging that if I miss something, I miss something. But, yeah, go ahead and sort of share with me what you got out of it and why you thought it was good. If you hate it and you're like, oh, Doug, you're right, this is a piece of shit and everything, that's fine. I would kindly ask, don't comment necessarily on that. If you want to give like an analysis of the film, that's fine, but like don't say like, no, don't listen to these idiots, it's stupid, it sucks. Don't do that. I'm here for ideas, I'm here to listen, and I'm here to find out if there's something I'm missing. And if everyone's like, no, you're not missing anything, it's just, emotionally it hit me, and I thought it was clever, fair enough, it just didn't do it for me. Or if there's something like really obvious I'm just not catching on to, I've been known to miss stuff, like we all miss stuff. I'd love to know. So go ahead, sir, put down different thoughts or interpretations or why you enjoyed it, if you did enjoy the film. Because I really would like to sort of compare and contrast, because all the reviews I've read were very like, so many of them were built up on, I don't want to give it away, which I don't get. Is it really that big a deal? Is it really that big a woo thing? Cabin in the Woods, I get, but I don't get why keep the secret. Shh, I don't understand. But that's the key word. I don't understand. It's not that I'm right and you're wrong. It's more that I don't understand. See if you can explain it to me. So, yeah, that's about it. As of now, I actually like Unfriended better, which I didn't think would happen. I just thought it was more creative and the pacing was better and I was more interested in. The characters were more fun and interesting, even though they were kind of stock characters too. But they were just more interesting than these characters. So, yeah, like I said, that doesn't mean it can't change or someone can point out something that I clearly missed, maybe. But yeah, go ahead, sort of leave in the comments, talk about your thoughts about the film, if you enjoyed it and what you enjoyed about it. And, yeah, let's see if we can figure out, let's just see if we can figure it follows out. So, that's about it, and I will see you guys later. And hey, if you're going to be at C2E2 this weekend, go ahead, check me out. I got a booth. I've promoted the hell out of it, so just another friendly reminder. So, yeah, that's about it, and I will see you guys later. Take care.